After 15 months of bloodshed, destruction, and fighting, Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire and hostage deal. In the truce, Hamas promises to release 33 hostages currently being held in Gaza, including at least 2 of 7 Americans. And in exchange, Israel will free hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and pause fighting, allowing desperately needed aid to get into Gaza. Celebrations swept the streets of Tel Aviv tonight. ABC News Live has team coverage on how the deal will unfold and what happens next. With just days left in office, the ceasefire deal, a top priority for President Biden, comes the same night as he makes his final address to the nation. The president is expected to focus on his major accomplishments over the last 4 years after 50 total years in politics.
My overriding objective will be to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of keeping Americans safe.
Another day of contentious confirmation hearings for President-elect Trump's nominees. His pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi pressed about remaining independent of Trump and her false claims about the 2020 election.
The danger has not yet passed, so please prioritize your safety.
Extreme Santa Ana winds sparking fears that new fires will ignite as exhausted firefighters on the front lines get reinforcements flooding into the area. Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with that major breakthrough in the Middle East tonight, 467 days after Hamas's horrific terror attack on Israel and the bloody conflict in Gaza that cost tens of thousands of Palestinian lives. The two sides have agreed on a framework for peace. President Biden announced the deal this afternoon. It's a multi-step process based on a framework he introduced back in May, and that negotiated along with Egypt, Qatar, and the incoming Trump administration. In phase 1, over the next 6 weeks, both sides have agreed to pause the fighting in Gaza. Israel has agreed to withdraw its troops. Hamas says it will release a number of hostages, including Americans, while Israel releases hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. There were celebrations on the streets in Israel and what is now known as Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, and jubilation in Gaza as well. But Hamas is urging residents not to move before the official start of the ceasefire. While this deal sets the stage for this war to finally end, the days ahead still prove critical. We have team coverage tonight from Tel Aviv to Washington. We begin with ABC's foreign correspondent, Tom Soufi-Burge. He leads us off from Tel Aviv. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, Lindsay, we were here when families got the news that finally, after more than 460 days, there was a deal. Take a look behind me. This makeshift tunnel is the type of tunnel, an art installation here in Hostage Square, the type of tunnel that hostages were held in. These faces, a daily reminder of the missing. But people don't know tonight whether or not their loved ones are dead or alive, and that includes Americans. A sense of relief in the streets of Tel Aviv and Gaza tonight, after Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire with the release of dozens of hostages still held inside Gaza in exchange for hundreds of Palestinians freed from Israeli prisons. Starting this Sunday and over the next 42 days, Israeli troops will withdraw their forces to a buffer zone around the Gaza Strip, halting military operations for the release of 33 hostages, starting with all women, children, elderly and the sick and injured. The pause in fighting would allow desperately needed humanitarian aid to flood into Gaza and allow negotiations to begin for a long-term ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who approved the deal, will now seek the green light from his security cabinet before going to his wider government. Barring any legal objections, the IDF would start receiving hostages in what they're calling Operation Wings of Freedom. Among those that could be released in phase 1, 2 of the 7 Americans captured and believed to still be alive. Sagi Dechelchen, a father of 3, and Keith Siegel, a North Carolina native. Eden Alexander, a dual American citizen, was serving in the IDF and stationed in southern Israel the morning of October 7th. While it's believed Eden won't be released in the first round, his father speaking just hours ago, saying he's never lost hope.
Unfortunately for the families that are waiting for their loved ones to be buried in Israel, the nightmare is over as well.
Gil Dickman, cousin of hostage Carmel Gat, killed in captivity in Gaza, praising President-elect Trump.
I think Trump was the X factor in bringing this deal to life.
The framework of the deal, spearheaded by the Biden administration, Qatar and Egypt, has been on the table since May. But after Trump's election victory in November, there was renewed momentum to close the agreement.
I knew this deal would have to be implemented by the next team, so I told my team to coordinate closely with the incoming team to make sure we're all speaking with the same voice, because that's what American presidents do.
With just days before he takes office, Trump calling it an epic agreement. This deal, a major promise for the president-elect.
If the deal isn't done before I take office, which is now going to be 2 weeks, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
The deal, the first truce since December 2023, now puts Israel and Hamas one step closer to ending a 15-month war that began early on October 7th when Hamas fighters brutally kidnapped and killed more than 1,200 Israelis. Following the horrific attack, an unrelenting assault launched by Israel. Entire areas reduced to rubble. To this day, more than 46,000 Palestinians have been killed. And back here in Hostage Square, where so many have pushed the government for a deal, heartbreak amid the celebration.
The deal that they're signing is very much the same deal that they had in May. Carmel was there on the list for the very first phase, and they didn't sign it in time.
So about 8 more months of additional anguish for people on both sides of this. Tom joins us now. And Tom, what are you hearing from people about their confidence in a lasting peace?
I think there's a mix of emotions tonight from relatives of the hostages we've been speaking to, Lindsay. On the one hand, there's a deep sigh of relief. You know, they're pleased that finally a deal is in place. But at the same time, you know, I think there's some anger, you know, that more hostages weren't saved, including, you know, hostages like young American Hirsch Goldberg-Pollen killed in captivity back in September. And also there's fear, there's anxiety about the future and whether or not this really will transition into phases 2 and 3 of the deal and lasting peace in the Gaza Strip. Lindsay?
Tom Sophie-Burge reporting from Tel Aviv. Tom, thank you. Now let's bring in our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, also in Tel Aviv tonight. And Ian, we know holding this ceasefire will not be an easy task. How are they going to keep this deal from falling apart?
Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult. And in some senses, we've seen how hard agreeing on phase 1 was. Well, agreeing on phases 2 and 3 is going to be even tougher. I think the first stage is, I think the biggest danger is that there is some breakdown in the ceasefire. Now, the deal is going to be monitored essentially by Qatar, by Egypt and the United States. They're going to act almost as moderators to check that everyone is abiding by their commitments. But while phase 1 is being implemented, then they've got to start the tough negotiations for phase 2, which should see the final release of all the hostages, including the bodies of those who were killed either on October 7th or throughout the course of the bombing campaign. And then phase 3, which is going to be the toughest of all, because that looks at the next day. In other words, what happens to Gaza after Israeli troops withdraw, if indeed they do, and what does that look like? And that's going to be hugely challenging, not least because the Israelis have made it clear that they don't regard Hamas as legitimate, that they should not run the government. However, they were elected. They're not just a military movement, they're a political movement as well. So who fills that void and how is that policed? Lindsay?
Yeah, so many questions about what happens next. After the announcement of the ceasefire, as you know, bombings continued in Gaza. In just 1 hour today, 12 people were killed, at least 20 injured. That's according to Gaza's civil defense. Do you anticipate that that will only continue until the ceasefire goes into effect on Sunday?
I think we should expect that. In fact, possibly even an escalation. If you look at what happened after the agreement was struck between Hezbollah and the Israeli government, there was an uptick in the bombing in the final few hours. And again, I saw this in Lebanon in 2006 at the end of the war there. The bombing accelerated in the final few hours, trying to achieve certain military goals, but also denying land and access to people. So, yes, we should brace for more. More than 80 killed since this morning in Gaza. So, yes, some sense of relief that this is going ahead, but the reality on the ground is life and conditions are as tough as they've ever been. Lindsay?
Ian Pannell from Tel Aviv. Ian, our thanks to you. For more than a year, the families of those hostages had been holding out hope for this day, but for some, this moment comes too late. Hersh Goldberg Poland, an Israeli-American hostage, died at the hands of Hamas terrorists while in captivity. The world had gotten to know who he was and his story from his parents, Rachel and John. We've spoken with them several times over the last 15 months. They join us now. And first off, our condolences to you and your family, as I imagine today has been a difficult day among so many over the past 467 days. How are you all feeling now that it's been announced that they've come to an agreement on this ceasefire?
It's actually interesting because it's not difficult. It's actually finally this welcome announcement that we have been working toward tirelessly and waiting for. For us, obviously, it is tragically, horribly too late for our only son, Hersh. But we have become like family for so many of the 98 remaining hostages, their families and friends. And we are so hopeful and optimistic. We need to remember this has to be rolled out until the very end and each and every person comes home. So there can't be true celebration until everyone is where they're supposed to be.
President Biden said that elements of this deal are what he proposed back in May. Some Israeli cabinet members have even boasted about blocking prior agreements. What's your message to those leaders tonight when, in essence, this deal could have been done months ago, which you all know all too well would have saved lives?
Absolutely. So Rachel talked about it. We will unfortunately suffer for the rest of our lives knowing that Hersh could have been part of this. Your colleague Tom was shown speaking to Gil Dickman, a cousin of Carmel Gott, who was killed with Hersh 139 days ago. Those are souls that we will never be able to bring home, and we should have. The message to the decision makers, including in Israel, is do not allow any other family to go through what we have gone through. All of these 98 must come home. You could do the math. Phase 1 calls for the release of 33. That's 33 that we're going to celebrate, but that leaves 65 that we need to make sure that we get from phase 1 to phase 2 and ultimately to phase 3 and bring home all 98 of these people who were taken, I remind you, from their beds and from a music festival. It's way too long.
We can't tell because, well, there you have it before we had the banner at the bottom of the screen, but we do still see you have the sticker on you with that 467, recognizing the numbers of days that have passed. Have you started thinking about just how plausible it might be that soon you'll be able to take that sticker off?
I was just thinking this morning, as you mentioned, Lindsay, we've been advocating and changing to show the accountability of our failure every single day for this whole time. And this morning when I wrote 467, I thought, you know, God willing, one day very soon, I'm going to use this masking tape as tape and not as a label for who I am and not as a label for humanity's failure to bring these people home.
Who do you think deserves credit for finally getting this deal done?
You know, we're going to let people fight over the credit. What we would say is the Biden administration absolutely gets an A for their effort. They have been pushing hard. They have been available to the families. But we cannot deny that it ultimately took the tough talk of President-elect Trump to get this over the finish line. And it will now be more up to President-elect Trump's team to ensure that the deal as signed gets implemented.
Right.
So there's credits to go around. We could talk about who's to blame for it taking this long. But right now, let's just celebrate that hopefully the first 33 are going to be reunited soon. And we're going to keep on going all the way to the finish line with the rest.
We've talked about this before with you, but can you remind those who did not have the good fortune to meet your son Hersh about him and what made him smile?
Well, he was a very laid back, happy-go-lucky, easy-going kind of person. So he was an easy smiler, a passionate soccer fan, was wild about music and music festivals, had a deep desire and curiosity about the world and traveling the world, and had done extensive travel, and was someone with very little ego who loved meeting new people and was an expert listener, which is a very unique quality I now know.
I just want to add that Hirsch had the good fortune of meeting a lot of people from different walks of life in his 23 years. And the most touching thing for us in the 139 days since he was killed is meeting people all over the place who tell us that they knew him. We had a flight attendant last week come over to us and tell us that she knew Hirsch and shared warm stories with us. And it just consistently happens all over the place. And it warms our hearts to hear from those people.
And we feel privileged that we were his parents. We feel that we were blessed and privileged for 23 years and 3 days to have Hirsch with us.
Rachel, I heard some of you said that I like to consider myself an expert listener, so I'd just like to offer both of you for this moment anything else on your heart that you'd like to share with all of us.
I want to make sure that people realize that this is the beginning of a process that has to bring everyone home. When last November in 2023, the only release that was that came together, at the end it fell apart. And so it's very important that this deal be completed, all three phases, and that nothing falls apart, and that we surmount the insurmountable. If anything comes up that is sticky or difficult or complex, we figure out how to work through it and get these people home and get the innocent people of Gaza to have the calm and recovery that they so desperately need.
I think that's
one thing I want to add is we have seen geopolitics up close, too close, for the last 15 months, and we've seen it fail our family and so many other families. But what we've also seen, including I'm sure for many of your viewers, is the best in humanity. We have been so supported from so many people from all over the world, all religions, sending us strength and encouragement and continuing to do so since Hirsch's murder. And we thank all of those people, and it gives us hope that despite all the darkness now, goodness can and will still prevail.
Light is on the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Rachel and John, we thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Linsey.
Let's dig into this a bit more with Mick Mulroy, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East and ABC News contributor. Mick, thanks so much for joining us, as always. As we just heard, this is a 6-week ceasefire intended to lead to a permanent end to the war. How confident are you in a lasting peace in the timeline laid out in this agreement?
So, Linsey, first of all, we should all celebrate this. This is a long time coming. It's going to be really how the sides keep their promises, keep their side of the agreement. If that happens, if hostages come out, if Palestinian prisoners are relieved, if these significant increase in humanitarian aid goes in, then it's more and more likely that we'll get to a second phase. And of course, in that phase, there'll be more of that. There'll be more withdrawals of the IDF out of populated areas. And that would be what gets us to the third phase.
We've seen President-elect Donald Trump take credit for finally getting this ceasefire deal across the finish line. Do you think that that's accurate?
I do think President Trump can take credit, but it's a shared credit, not only with the current administration, which also deserves a lot of credit for, especially for their effort, but all the other mediators that were involved in this. It was certainly a collective effort of several countries that led to this.
President Biden highlighted the conditions that changed to finally lead to this ceasefire agreement. Let's listen.
Iran is weaker than it's been in decades. Hezbollah is badly degraded. And after more than 15 months of war, Hamas's senior leaders are dead. Thousands of Hamas fighters are dead. And the military formations have been destroyed. With nowhere to turn, Hamas finally agreed to releasing hostages.
But Hamas is still the governing authority in Gaza. So what does governance look like in Gaza going forward? And when we think about what Netanyahu had vowed from the beginning, he said that he wasn't going to end the war until Hamas has been destroyed. And it doesn't seem like has occurred ultimately.
I don't think Israel will ever accept Hamas governing Gaza long term. They are obviously a terrorist organization whose sole purpose of existence appears to be to attack Israel. I think there'll be a strong push, not just by Israel, but by the United States and other partners in the region and from the Palestinian people to have a new form of leadership that focuses more on the Palestinian people themselves in Gaza in trying to develop their economy and working toward a diplomatic long-term solution with Israel.
What role do you think that the U.S. will play in the future of Gaza?
Well, I think the United States, of course, is going to look to try to expand the Abraham Accords, which were, of course, between Israel, the UAE, and other Gulf countries. They're going to look to do that with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is likely going to say that there needs to be a two-state solution where the Palestinians have their own country, of course, that lives in peace with Israel. So I think that is going to be the main effort of the incoming Trump administration when it comes to their Middle East policy.
Mick Mulroy, we thank you so much for your time and insight. Appreciate it. Let's turn to Mary Bruce at the White House. And Mary, the president set to deliver his farewell address to the nation just a short time from now. How do we expect that he'll frame the ceasefire and the deal to bring the hostages home?
Well, Linsey, President Biden and this administration worked tirelessly for months to reach this agreement. It was his top priority before leaving office and one he is sure to tout tonight in his farewell address to the nation. The president today has been quick to note that this deal builds off the framework that he announced last spring. But the timing of all of this is certainly hard to ignore. It's only coming together just days before Trump takes office and as he's been making those threats. And of course, President Biden did actually bring in the Trump transition team into these final negotiations, well aware that the deal hammered out by the current administration was going to have to be executed by the next one. Donald Trump today is taking credit for this deal, but tonight the White House is insisting it was President Biden who got this done, Linsey.
Mary Bruce from the White House. All right, Mary, thank you. And for more on President Biden's farewell address tonight, we're joined by former Baltimore Mayor and Democratic National Committee Secretary Stephanie Rawlings-Blake and senior editor of The Dispatch and ABC News political contributor Sarah Isker. Thank you both so much for joining us. First off, for both of you, Stephanie, we'll start with you. If you were giving the president advice tonight, what would you be telling him to do?
First, Linsey, happy Founders Day. If I were to give President Biden advice, I would just tell him to speak from his heart, to think about his decades of service and try to encourage this next generation. There's so many Democrats and really, old school Republicans who feel like we're living in the upside down right now, where bad behavior and illegal behavior is being rewarded. And we need encouragement. And I think Biden, who is the consoler-in-chief, can hopefully give some good advice to this next generation. He has such a great record. Hopefully tonight he'll be able to articulate that well as talk about the vice president and the things that they were able to do in this 4 years, and to give us something to be hopeful for. That is my hope for this speech.
Sarah, how about you?
It'll be interesting to see whether he tries to talk to Democrats, where they're very disappointed in a president who obviously they feel cost them the election, didn't deliver on many of the promises they hoped, tried to do too many things for too many people and didn't have one specific sort of Biden vision, maybe squandered the opportunities he had when he held both houses of Congress. But his approval rating nationally is as low as it's ever been in his presidency. So how will he seal the deal with the American people in his last address as president and in the shadow of Jimmy Carter's funeral, where he must be thinking of his larger legacy as a president of the United States?
And speaking of legacy, again, question for both of you. Stephanie, we'll start with you. What kind of overall impact can an address like this have on a president's legacy?
I don't know if this speech will impact his legacy. I think this will impact him personally. I think history will recount Biden as it will, and I think the speech will have little to do with it. But for someone who dedicated a significant amount of time to public service, I know what this farewell speech means, to be able to thank the people that you serve, to be able to do your best to leave on a high note. President Biden is leaving the United States with one of the competitive economies in the world, and that's a lot to be proud of.
Sarah?
I agree entirely. I don't think this will actually affect his legacy, but when we look back on the Biden presidency, I'm absolutely certain this speech will be looked at. So does he choose to make this a bridging speech about the future of his party? Does he choose to make it all about himself, which I think would be a big mistake at this point? Trying to take credit has not worked for him so far, and instead leads a lot of people to say, well, actually, you didn't do this, or well, actually, you compromised on this. But what we've seen at the end of the Biden presidency, I think, has been a very self-centered, self-absorbed person trying to grasp onto a legacy rather than create one.
Well, we'll find out in just a few moments. Sarah Isker, Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, thank you both so much for your time. You can watch President Biden's farewell address tonight at 8 p.m. right here on ABC News Live. And on Capitol Hill, it was day 2 of contentious confirmation hearings for President-elect Trump's cabinet nominees. His pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General and one-time personal lawyer for Trump, questioned about her independence and who she would answer to, Trump or the law. Our senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott reports from Capitol Hill.
Tonight, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee pressing Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi.
Do you swear?
On whether she will truly be independent from President-elect Donald Trump.
I need to know that you would tell the president no if you're asked to do something that is wrong, illegal, or unconstitutional.
Today, Bondi, a former state attorney general from Florida who represented Trump in his first impeachment trial and pushed his false claims of voter fraud in 2020, still refused to say that he lost that election.
Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States.
Bondi insisting she will be independent and enforce the law fairly.
Politics will not play a part.
Democrats also asking about FBI Director nominee Kash Patel, who was vowed to go after Trump's foes.
I believe that Kash is the right person at this time for this job. You'll have the ability to question Mr. Patel.
And I'm questioning you right now about whether you will enforce an enemies list that he announced publicly on television.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Bondi's confirmation, all but assured, Republicans singing her praises.
The United States of America could only be so fortunate if you were confirmed and to have someone of your caliber, of your intellect, and of your experience running a department that unfortunately has been run into the ground.
And over in the Foreign Relations Committee, President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of State, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, appearing on a glide path to confirmation. Rubio winning praise from both Republicans and Democrats.
Your extensive foreign policy experience and your deep understanding of international relations, I think, makes you a perfect choice for the position.
Senator Rubio, the president made a great decision in choosing you. I'm happy to see you there. You're a thought leader in foreign policy.
Usual to see Democrats heaping on praise to one of Trump's cabinet picks. Our thanks to Rachel Scott for that. The Los Angeles area is on high alert for new fires. Thousands of firefighters stand at the ready, and with more than 12,000 homes and structures believed to already be destroyed, rents are skyrocketing and authorities are warning against price gouging. Our chief national correspondent Matt Gutman on the scene again tonight.
Tonight, with that fire danger looming, families in Southern California are shell-shocked and worried a new inferno could break out.
They've got everything prepared. You can see the monumental amount of resources. A fire truck here, one tucked in there, another one in that driveway, 5, 6, and on down almost every block has fire trucks here in this canyon.
Today, we spoke with L.A. County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney.
There is another Santa Ana wind event forecast for next week.
Yes. Yes. The L.A. County Fire Department's going to be ready.
Across the fire zone, at least 24 still missing tonight. Meanwhile, thousands of displaced families are struggling to find shelter. Rents skyrocketing.
My son keeps asking me, when are we going to stop moving? And I don't have an answer for it.
After the Eden fire destroyed her family's Altadena home, Erica Lee telling our Jacqueline Lee she's seen the price gouging firsthand.
How quickly are these listings getting taken off the market?
I've reached out to a couple places, and a lot of them have already been taken. And one of them that I applied for upped the rent $1,000 an hour after I applied.
LA's district attorney demanding it stop.
So not only are you going to be looking at criminal penalties, you will be looking at civil penalties. You will be publicly shamed.
And today, children whose elementary schools burned down in the Palisades fire welcomed to new ones.
We're excited. I'm really thankful for Brentwood opening their doors, and I feel like that's been really helpful.
But it's not school that's on their minds, or even the Play-Doh in 9-year-old Charlotte Owens' hands. Her home has smoke damage.
I had to spend my birthday under evacuation. My worries of just like my house burning down just gone to my head. Nightmares of no house and all my stuff being gone. My childhood memories might be gone.
Hard to process at any age. Our thanks to Matt Gutman. Still to come, a food dye commonly found in American food and medicine is banned by the FDA after being linked to cancer. But next, President Trump used to belittle Senator Marco Rubio, but now the senator from Florida is Trump's nominee for Secretary of State. In today's nomination hearing, Rubio mapped out his vision for American foreign policy.
Donald Trump, historic, taking the oath of office for the second time. Inauguration Day, America turns to ABC News, starting with a special Good Morning America. Then live all across the day, David Muir, right there as history is made. Monday on ABC.
For the record, your name is Xavier Collins.
Yes.
You have 2 children.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw Cal Bradford alive?
Agent Collins, have a seat. I walked the president to his room at 2204.
When did you discover the body?
At 8:01, that's when I found him lying next to his bed.
Did you kill him?
No.
Is a part of you happy that Cal is dead?
This family is suffocated. We are all here to help them. We're gonna make this happen. We have 96 hours to build a house.
Come on, guys, it's moving day. Let's go. It can't be real.
This was more than just extreme home makeover. This was extreme life makeover.
Extreme Makeover Home Edition, Thursday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
I'm 110% ready to fall in love.
Tall, handsome, smart. He's perfect.
Time just stood still. It's kind of already sinking in that these other girls are dating my boyfriend.
Everybody just really wants Grant, and we're all fighting for his love.
You act like you don't care.
He knows how I feel.
I know I'm in trouble.
Everyone's so mean.
I did not know how hard this was going to be.
All I want is to find our way home.
I'll get you home.
But a crew of murderous bounty hunters is coming after us. We have to move fast.
We have no idea who he is.
You can trust me.
You're a Jedi, right?
Of course.
What just happened?
Watch this.
Skeleton Crew, new episodes Tuesdays, only on Disney+.
I only have one rule. Stay out of the basement. What do you got in the basement? I can't talk about it quite yet.
There's something down there that will destroy the world.
We're talking about a monster, a real monster.
You are in danger. Kids are disappearing.
Tonight, as LA communities face new fire threats, the rare red flag warnings in place. Plus, the Trump cabinet confirmation hearings, key takeaways. World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Welcome back, everyone. With the world focused on the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza, tonight, Senator Marco Rubio is poised to take a major role in the peace process as President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of State. Today, he faced questions from his colleagues in the Senate at his confirmation hearing, which compared to others was not at all controversial. He would make history as the first Latino and first-generation American to hold the post. Our Alex Prochet has more on who he is and what his confirmation to the post would mean for our foreign policy.
Secretary of State nominee Senator Marco Rubio has bipartisan support on Capitol Hill. Some of his colleagues are already saying as much on TV.
I think Marco Rubio is enormously well qualified for the job for which he's been nominated.
I'm going to vote yes for Senator Rubio.
However, we wanted to see just how deep that support runs, so we walked the halls of the Senate ourselves to talk to those that will be responsible for his confirmation.
He's going to be confirmed. He's well thought of. He's respected. He's a hard worker.
I think Marco's going to do an extraordinary job. He's going to get more than 80 votes in confirmation, probably closer to 90.
There is no doubt that he is equipped, ready, and will be a tremendous leader at the State Department.
Democrats expect Rubio to have support amongst their ranks as well.
I think Marco Rubio stands a very, very good chance. I'm leaning towards supporting him.
Have you already made up your mind?
We have a process, but I imagine he's going to get significant bipartisan support.
Was it any surprise to you that, forget the nomination, but that he was on the short list for Secretary of State?
Yeah. Elliot Abrams is a senior fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations and has served in 3 different Republican administrations, including the Trump administration.
You never know, I think, in the case of President Trump, who he's going to forgive and who he isn't.
It's true that Rubio and the president-elect have had an up-and-down relationship.
You have this clown, Marco Rubio.
When both were vying for the Republican nomination in 2016, Trump mocked Rubio and called him
Little Marco, Little Marco.
He's always calling me Little Marco. And I'll admit, the guy, he's taller than me. He's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2". And you know what they say about men with small hands? You can't trust them.
Rubio referred to Trump as vulgar and dangerous.
He's a con artist. He consistently is telling people he's going to be out there fighting on their behalf, but he has spent 40 years sticking it to the people he now claims to be fighting for.
But after that election, Rubio's rhetoric changed, and their relationship changed so much so that he was rumored to be a possible running mate this election cycle.
The country was better off when Trump was president. Whether you like everything he says or not, that's the bottom line, and that's how most Americans are going to end up voting, is who are they better off on?
What qualifications is he bringing to this role?
Rubio has been on the Foreign Relations Committee and on the Intelligence Committee. So he's got whatever qualifications you can have as a senator. Like most senators, there is a question of management. Most of them, unless they've been a governor, which he hasn't, have never really managed anything larger than their own office.
As America's leading diplomat, Rubio could define the U.S. relationship with China with a more hawkish approach.
The threat that will define this century is China.
President-elect Trump made headlines with an overture to President Xi by inviting him to his inauguration in January, though it's unlikely that Xi will attend.
Rubio's been an internationalist, and he's been pretty much a hardliner. Hardliner on China.
Explain what that means.
His view has been that the Chinese are hostile to the United States, and we need to be a lot more careful about our trade and economic relationship with them.
In the Senate, Rubio is a staunch critic of Chinese trade abuses and allegations of the use of forced labor. He's known for pushing legislation targeting the country and was sanctioned twice by Beijing in 2020 and is banned from entering China, which would be a first for an acting U.S. Secretary of State.
What do you expect his impact on foreign policy, specifically with our relationship with China?
I think he's going to continue the process of holding them accountable.
If successfully confirmed, the 3-time senator would make history at the State Department by being the first Latino to serve as Secretary of State.
This could be a real change. To have a secretary who can not only talk to you, but who's been all over Latin America and can talk to you in your language, that's new.
Rubio would also inherit a complicated geopolitical landscape, from Russia's war on Ukraine to the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas.
You've got 2 major conflicts that you've got to deal with. One of them is the series of conflicts: Israel, Gaza, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, China. The other is going to be inside the administration. That is the struggle between what I'd call the internationalists and people who are more or less isolationists.
Abrams predicts there will be no shortage of opinions in this new administration and suggests for Rubio to have any influence on the president-elect, he needs constant communication with Trump.
You've got to be there face to face. If you don't, you're Rex Tillerson, the first Trump Secretary of State, you're gone in a year. There is nothing that Rubio's going to do that is more important than maintaining his relationship with President Trump.
Loyalty appears to be a through line throughout this incoming administration. Our thanks to Alex Perche for that. Still much more to get to tonight. Coming up, the Emmy Award-winning filmmaker's newest project about a very unique shelter for homeless Americans. But next, TikTok is set to be banned in 4 days. We go by the numbers on what it would all mean.
I'm 110% ready to fall in love.
Tall, handsome, smart.
He's perfect.
Time just stood still.
It's kind of already sinking in that these other girls are dating my boyfriend.
Everybody just really wants Grant, and we're all fighting for his love.
You act like you don't care.
He knows how I feel.
I know I'm in trouble.
Everyone's so mean.
I did not know how hard this was going to be.
The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia. We're in artillery position about 2 miles away from Gaza.
And ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Traveling with the president to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Here in London today,
Off the coast of Gaza.
downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii. Some areas are still smoldering.
Wherever the story.
From the front lines, the ruins of Rafah. From the FBI.
Reporting from Capitol Hill.
In western Portugal.
Outside of Mexico City.
In Iceland. Let's go.
Here in France.
The eclipse across America.
Just stunning.
Unbelievable.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere because the news never stops.
For the record, your name is Xavier Collins.
Yes.
You have 2 children.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw Cal Bradford alive?
Agent Collins, have a seat.
I walked the president to his room at 2204.
When did you discover the body?
At 8:01, that's when I found him lying next to his bed.
Did you kill him?
No.
Is a part of you happy that Cal is dead?
I only have one rule. Stay out of the basement.
What do you got in the basement?
I can't talk about it quite yet.
There's something down there that will destroy the world.
We're talking about a monster, a real monster.
You are in danger. Kids are disappearing.
All we want is to find our way home.
I'll get you home.
But
A crew of murderous bounty hunters is coming after us. We have to move fast.
we have no idea who he is.
You can trust me.
You're a Jedi, right?
Of course.
What just happened?
Watch this.
Skeleton Crew. New episodes Tuesdays, only on Disney+.
Donald Trump, historic, taking the oath of office for the second time. Inauguration Day, America turns to ABC News, starting with a special Good Morning America. Then live all across the day, David Muir, right there as history is made. Monday on ABC. What would you do?
I didn't think they were going to send me a female driver.
If you saw a woman treated like this?
I don't trust women drivers. Are you going to be doing your makeup on the whole time?
Just wait till you see what happens.
So the question is, what would you do?
Tonight on ABC.
I'm Whit Johnson, reporting from Maui. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back, everyone. With the Supreme Court now unlikely to weigh in on the federal law banning TikTok in the U.S., it's quite possible the app will cease working come Sunday when the ban goes into effect. Where might TikTok users flee is tonight by the numbers. The Chinese company ByteDance, which owns TikTok, probably won't find a U.S. buyer before the January 19th deadline, but the chance is not zero that investors like, say, Elon Musk won't swoop in to offer the $40 to $50 billion that some analysts say is ByteDance's asking price for TikTok. And whereas 50% of U.S. adults said that they supported the ban in March of 2023, according to a poll by Pew Research Center, that number fell to just 32% when Pew asked the same question this past summer. 1/3 of adults say that they use TikTok at least occasionally. So which platforms might they flee to in order to get their hip-hop, self-help, and how-to videos? Well, Red Note is one, and if you haven't heard of it, well, that's likely about to change because it is now the top free app in Apple's U.S. store. And another social media app, Lemon8, is now the second most popular free app in Apple's store. The irony of all of this, both Red Note and Lemon8 are owned by Chinese companies, just like TikTok. And we still have much more to get to here on Prime. Director Andi Timoner won Sundance's U.S. Grand Jury Prize twice and joins us to discuss her latest documentary on the only hospice for the homeless in America. She shares with us the patient's often heartbreaking tribulations. And Drake is now taking his rap battle against Kendrick Lamar to the courts, filing suit against their record label, saying they allowed Lamar to defame him in Lamar's hit song, Not Like Us.
I only have one rule. Stay out of the basement.
What do you got in the basement?
I can't talk about it quite yet.
There's something down there that will destroy the world.
We're talking about a monster, a real monster. You are in danger. Kids are disappearing.
I'm 110% ready to fall in love.
Tall, handsome, smart. He's perfect.
Time just stood still. It's kind of already sinking in that these other girls are dating my boyfriend.
Everybody just really wants Grant, and we're all fighting for his love.
You act like you don't care.
He knows how I feel.
I know I'm in trouble.
Everyone's so mean.
I did not know how hard this was going to be.
The red dye used in food, drinks, and drugs that was linked to cancer is now banned by the FDA. Chicago police take a wily coyote into custody, and the Kitty Cafe offering cuddles to those impacted by the LA wildfires. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown.
SpaceX has launched a double mission to the moon. The lunar landers lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center early this morning, one built by a private Japanese company called iSpace. Their first lander crashed into the moon 2 years ago. Texas-based Firefly Aerospace is flying the other one with 10 NASA experiments on board, including a vacuum to gather moon dirt. They're taking different paths to the moon. The first is expected to reach the surface in March. The FDA says it is banning the use of red number 3 in food, beverages, and some drugs in response to a 2022 petition from health groups and activists. Red number 3 is a synthetic food dye that gives food and drinks like candy and icing a bright cherry red color. According to the FDA, at least 2 studies have shown high levels of food dye were linked to cancer in rats, but did not see that in humans. Food manufacturers have until 2027 to reformulate their products, and drug makers have until 2028. Bad Bunny has broken another Billboard record thanks to the arrival of his new studio album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos. The Puerto Rican singer is now the first Latin artist to log 100 entries on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. He also announced his first concert residency, 21 shows at the Coliseo de Puerto Rico in San Juan that kicks off July 11th.
Watch out, guys. Watch out, watch out, watch out.
Police in Chicago had to pull a coyote from a grocery store refrigerator after the animal was spotted hiding beneath the fine cheeses. Police and Animal Care and Control removed the coyote safely, and there were no reports of injuries. The coyote has been transferred to a wildlife rehab center. 21-year-old Karen Kalesso from Norway has become the youngest person to reach the South Pole on skis solo and without help. She covered the 702 miles in just under 54 days, enduring wicked cold, hitting minus 13 degrees along the way. The polar explorer trained for 6 years, endured cold-induced asthma, and then said she thought the man-made structures on the South Pole were, quote, a little ugly. A cat cafe in Los Angeles is offering free 15-minute cat cuddling sessions to help calm fire victims. It's called Crumbs and Whiskers. Its mission is to rescue cats and kittens from euthanasia at high-kill shelters. But right now, it's the kitties who appear to be rescuing the humans.
Drake and Kendrick Lamar's rap beef is leading to a legal battle, with Drake suing Universal Music Group, the label for both artists. Now, the suit claims Lamar's hit Not Like Us falsely accuses Drake of being a pedophile and calls for violence against him. It accuses the label of approving and publishing the song, pointing out lyrics like Kendrick calling Drake and his crew, quote, certified pedophiles. Joining us now is ABC News legal contributor, Mr. Brian Buckmeyer. Now, Brian, Drake pulled a previous suit that involves Spotify and payola allegations. Now he's suing them for defamation. What's the strategy here?
Yeah, so it could be a number of things. So the lawsuit that Drake pulled was first arguing that there was this pay-to-play with Spotify and UMG. It did have some arguments of defamation, but it wasn't an actual claim within it. Now this new lawsuit is alleging defamation, harassment, and a violation of business law. The strategy of only naming UMG and not Kendrick might be to just go after the bigger pockets. UMG is worth about $40 to $45 billion, while Kendrick Lamar is worth $140 million, sorry. And so it could just be that, or the strategy of Drake going after UMG as the label of his music, trying to maybe potentially get out of a contract for a contract violation claim.
Now, many of us remember the line, trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor, right? And many people think that was clever. Others think that was cold, but it's not Kendrick that he's going after. It's the record label for defamation. The label has said, in part, throughout his career, Drake has intentionally and successfully used UMG to distribute his music and poetry, to engage in conventionally outrageous back-and-forth rap battles, to express his feelings about other artists. They also accuse Drake of weaponizing the legal process to silence another artist. What could be the rationale for Drake to go after the label here? And do you think, potentially, because you did kind of talk about that with regard to they maybe have bigger pocketbook there, but Kendrick is also set to perform at the Super Bowl. Might this, in a way, silence him and prevent him from, in particular, performing the song Not Like Us?
So I'm unsure about that preventing Kendrick from playing Not Like Us at the Super Bowl. So fans of his, I think it's a possibility. There's nothing in this lawsuit that's asking for an injunction, nothing that Drake is asking of UMG or a court to stop Kendrick Lamar from being able to publish the music. But I think the strategy in some part here is a bit of a slight distinction. The argument here now is that UMG was reckless in putting out this information that Drake says is false. They could be arguing simply that UMG did not do their due diligence to see whether or not the music they were putting forward was truthful, or as opposed to if he's going against Kendrick Lamar, that's an argument more so as to whether or not that allegation is true. And I know a lot of people are still back and forth between whether or not these allegations that Kendrick Lamar levied against Drake are true or not. And so I think how you argue it is also going to shape what type of evidence comes out in depositions in the case.
Seems like it's also been the essence of rap battles, though, going back for decades, whether it was true or not, that you would just make these offhanded comments. But Brian Buckmeyer, we thank you so much for your legal expertise. Award-winning documentarian and Emmy-nominated filmmaker Andi Timoner is known for capturing unique slices of life in her stories, spending months, if not years, with her subjects. She's won Sundance's U.S. Grand Jury Prize twice and is now out with a new documentary, The In-Between, about the only hospice for the homeless in America, located in Salt Lake City. Let's take a look.
Things can go haywire in a hurry. I've seen attorneys end up on the street. I've seen engineers end up on the street. Students, you name it, they're all out there. People with some education that just, something happened.
Andi, thank you so much for joining us. And before we get to the in-between, I understand that you recently lost your home in the LA wildfires. Just give us a sense of how you're doing.
I mean, it's an unfathomable loss.
for so many people and for our beautiful town of Altadena. Everything I ever had was in the house. I was in Europe shooting a film about the Nazis at the time, so I wasn't able to pull anything out. So I'm just sort of grappling with the chaos of it and the loss. And you know, of course, having made this film and have so many dear friends who are homeless, to be among them now is something. It feels very, very intense and very scary.
I think that part of the film just deals with the idea of just how unexpected homelessness can be. You have one gentleman who's there who talks about how he lost his house in a divorce. The wife got the divorce, and all of a sudden he was homeless. And many of us think, oh, they are different. Exactly. What did you learn about the people who were without a home?
Well, I think what is really a unique sort of opportunity with the In-Between, which is the name of the actual place, is that it elevates the people that are in there. They have community. They have a resident council. They go on field trips. They are treated with love and care, and so they're able to really express what it is to be homeless from a very different perspective than I've ever seen in a film before. It's quite an uplifting experience to be there. Like every time we would go there to shoot, we'd never want to leave. And what I learned is they're just like us, you know? I mean, here I am homeless now as well. It happens in an instant.
We see often many scenarios of nursing homes or hospice centers or places, shelters for the homeless, where a bunch of people who live nearby say, not in my backyard. How was the In-Between able to get past all of that?
You know, it was a real struggle for them. And now those same neighbors are volunteering there, doing jewelry making classes and, you know, sing-alongs, and there's a piano there.
Why do you think we don't see more of these inns? Because when we talk about, in broad strokes in our country, about how we have a problem with homelessness, we have a problem with drug addiction, we have a problem with mental illness, but this seems to be, in small part, a solution if we could have this across the country.
That's why we made the movie, and that's why it's going to be, you know, out on the LA Times site and hopefully get even further with distribution. We hope that everyone will see this. We hope that mayors will realize that if they actually help an In-Between happen in their town, then they will see such a great result. Not only will there be less people on the streets, there'll be no one dying on the streets anymore, and the emergency rooms won't have the kind of, you know, constant flow of people in need who just can't get care otherwise.
It feels like you're on to something, that they are, and by you magnifying it for the world to see, really, it feels like it does offer some opportunity of hope for us all.
I feel like there's such a stigma attached to homelessness, like you talked about, and I hope that this film is such, you know, it's just such a enjoyable experience to watch the film.
Andi, we thank you so much for this, and wishing you personally all the best as well.
Thank you so much.
Her documentary, The In-Between, features the life stories of residents in the only hospice for the homeless in America. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, President Biden speaks to the nation, a farewell address from the Oval Office in his final days as Commander-in-Chief.
Tonight, as LA communities face new fire threats, the rare red flag warnings in place, plus the Trump cabinet confirmation hearings, key takeaways. World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
For the record, your name is Xavier Collins.
Yes.
You have 2 children.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw Cal Bradford alive?
Agent Collins, have a seat. I walked the president to his room at 2204.
When did you discover the body?
At 8:01, that's when I found him lying next to his bed.
Did you kill him?
No.
Is a part of you happy that Cal is dead?
Is suffocated. We are all here to help them. We're gonna make this happen. We have 96 hours to build a house.
Come on, guys, it's moving day. Let's go.
It can't be real.
This was more than just extreme home makeover. This was extreme life makeover.
Extreme Makeover Home Edition, Thursday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Hey, good morning, America. Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Are you ready? They are ready. Covering the biggest events in the country right now.
There's a lot going on here this morning.
You don't just see it, you feel it.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in too.
I'll be there.
I am here and so happy.
I'm in.
I'm in too.
Michael, George, Clara, Ginger.
Donald Trump, historic, taking the oath of office for the second time. Inauguration Day, America turns to ABC News, starting with a special Good Morning America. Then live all across the day, David Muir, right there as history is made. Monday on ABC.
Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are awaiting President Biden's farewell address at the White House. He's expected to begin speaking at any moment. The White House would not reveal what he plans to say tonight, but the White House press secretary did describe this as an important moment for the president. She says he will not be partisan as he caps a 5-decade political career. Speaking directly to the American people tonight, earlier today, in a letter, Biden said he is leaving the country stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. Of course, he's not necessarily leaving on his own terms. He'll be speaking tonight behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. He has said prior that I have given my heart and my soul to our nation, and I have been blessed 1,000,000 times in return with the love and support of the American people. He also said history is in your hands, referring, of course, directly to the American people. And we'll see what he has to say tonight as he talks about his last 4 years in office. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, ABC anchor, World News Tonight, David Muir.
This is an ABC News special report. President Biden's farewell address to the nation. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good evening again, everyone. In just a few moments from now, President Biden will be delivering his farewell address to the nation from the Oval Office. The president in the final days of his administration, reflecting on a political career spanning 5 decades. In a letter to the American people today, he says, serving the nation has been, quote, the privilege of my life. Tonight, President Biden is expected to look back at his own legacy while at the same time discussing how he sees the country moving forward. The president writing today, history is now in your hands. He came into the White House when America was in the grips of the pandemic and millions of Americans were out of work. He will leave Washington with unemployment down to 4.1%. The president saying his administration created more than 16 million jobs. 2024 was a record year for the stock market. His crowning achievement, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. Despite all of that, many Americans still struggling with the effects of inflation, especially the high cost of groceries. In July, he dropped out of the presidential race amid intense pressure from within his own party and concerns about his ability to serve another term. On Monday, America and the world will witness the peaceful transfer of power, and President-elect Donald Trump will make his return to the White House. Let's listen tonight to President Biden from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office. Before I begin, let me speak to important news from earlier today. After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans. This will be my final address to you from the American people from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be. Long ago in New York Harbor, an iron worker installed beam after beam, day after day. He was joined by steel workers, stonemasons, engineers. They built not just a single structure, but a beacon of freedom. The very idea of America was so big, we felt the entire world needed to see. The Statue of Liberty, a gift from France after our Civil War. Like the very idea of America, it was built not by one person, but by many people, from every background and from around the world. Like America, the Statue of Liberty is not standing still. Her foot literally steps forward atop a broken chain of human bondage. She's on the march, and she literally moves. She was built to sway back and forth to withstand the fury of stormy weather, to stand the test of time because storms are always coming. She sways a few inches, but she never falls into the current below. An engineering marvel. The Statue of Liberty is also an enduring symbol of the soul of our nation. A soul shaped by forces that bring us together and by forces that pull us apart. And yet, through good times and tough times, we've withstood it all. A nation of pioneers and explorers, of dreamers and doers, of ancestors native to this land, of ancestors who came by force, a nation of immigrants who came to build a better life, a nation holding the torch of the most powerful idea ever in the history of the world, that all of us are created equal, that all of us deserve to be treated with dignity, justice, and fairness, that democracy must defend and be defined and be imposed, moved in every way possible. Our rights, our freedoms, our dreams. But we know the idea of America, our institution, our people, our values that uphold it are constantly being tested. Ongoing debates about power and the exercise of power, but whether we lead by the example of our power or the power of our example, whether we show the courage to stand up to the abuse of power or we yield to it. After 50 years at the center of all of this, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society, the presidency, the Congress, the courts, a free and independent press, institutions that are rooted, they just might not reflect the timeless words, but they echo the words of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Rooted in the timeless words of the Constitution, we the people. Our system of separation of powers, checks and balances, it may not be perfect, but it's maintained our democracy for nearly 250 years, longer than any other nation in history that's ever tried such a bold experiment. In the past 4 years, our democracy has held strong. And every day I've kept my commitment to be president for all Americans through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history. I've had a great partner in Vice President Kamala Harris. It's been the honor of my life to see the resilience of essential workers getting us through a once-in-a-century pandemic, the heroism of service members and first responders keeping us safe, the determination of advocates standing up for our rights and our freedoms instead of losing their jobs to an economic crisis that we inherited. Millions of Americans now have the dignity of work. Millions of entrepreneurs and companies creating new businesses and industries, hiring American workers, using American products. And together, we've launched a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our entire history, from new roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet for every American. We invented the semiconductor, smaller than the tip of my little finger, and now is bringing those chip factories and those jobs back to America where they belong, creating thousands of jobs. Finally, giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for millions of seniors. And finally, doing something to protect our children and our families by passing the most significant gun safety law in 30 years. and bringing violent crime to a 50-year low, meeting our sacred obligation to over 1 million veterans so far who are exposed to toxic materials, and to their families, providing medical care and education benefits and more for their families. You know, it will take time to feel the full impact of all we've done together. But the seeds are planted, and they'll grow and they'll bloom for decades to come. At home, we've created nearly 17 million new jobs, more than any other single administration, a single term. More people have health care than ever before. And overseas, we've strengthened NATO. Ukraine is still free. And we've pulled ahead of our competition with China. And so much more. I'm so proud of how much we've accomplished together for the American people. And I wish the incoming administration success, because I want America to succeed. That's why I've held my duty to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power, to ensure we lead by the power of our example. I have no doubt that America's in a position to continue to succeed. That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before. More than a century ago, but the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy. They just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class, the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. We've got to do that again. In the last 4 years, that is exactly what we've done. People should be able to make as much as they can, but play by the same rules. Pay their fair share of taxes. So much is at stake. Right now, the existential threat of climate change has never been clearer. Just look across the country, from California to North Carolina. That's why I signed the most significant climate and clean energy law ever in the history of the world, and the rest of the world is trying to model it now. It's working, creating jobs and industries of the future. Now, we've proven we don't have to choose between protecting the environment and growing the economy. We're doing both. The powerful forces want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the climate crisis, to serve their own interest for power and profit. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. There's no time to waste. It's also clear that American leadership in technology is an unparalleled source of innovation that can transform lives. We see the same dangers of the concentration of technology, power, and wealth. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is the most consequential technology of our time, perhaps of all time. Nothing offers more profound possibilities and risks for our economy and our security, our society, for humanity. Artificial intelligence even has the potential to help us answer my call to end cancer as we know it. But unless safeguards are in place, AI could spawn new threats to our rights, our way of life, to our privacy, how we work and how we protect our nation. We must make sure AI is safe and trustworthy and good for all humankind. In the age of AI, it's more important than ever that the people must govern. And as the land of liberty, America, not China, must lead the world in the development of AI. You know, in the years ahead, it'll help to be, it's going to be up to the president, the presidency, the Congress, the courts, the free press, and the American people to confront these powerful forces. We must reform the tax code, not by giving the biggest tax cuts to billionaires, but by making them begin to pay their fair share. We need to get dark money. That's that hidden funding behind too many campaigns contributions. We need to get it out of our politics. We need to enact an 18-year time limit, time and term, for the strongest ethics and the strongest ethics reforms for our Supreme Court. We need to ban members of Congress from trading stock while they're in the Congress. We need to amend the Constitution to make clear that no president is immune from crimes that he or she commits while in office. The president's power is not limited. It's not absolute. And it shouldn't be. And in a democracy, there's another danger to the concentration of power and wealth. It erodes a sense of unity and common purpose. It causes distrust and division. Participating in our democracy becomes exhausting and even disillusioning. And people don't feel like they have a fair shot. We have to stay engaged in the process. I know it's frustrating. A fair shot is what makes America, America. Everyone's entitled to a fair shot. Not a guarantee, but just a fair shot, an even playing field. Going as far as your hard work and talent can take you. We can never lose that essential truth, remain who we are. I've always believed, and I've told other world leaders, America can be defined by one word: possibilities. Only in America do we believe anything is possible. Like a kid with a stutter from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claremont, Delaware, sitting behind this desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. That's the magic of America. It's all around us. Upstairs in the residence of the White House, I've walked by a painting of the Statue of Liberty I don't know how many times. In the painting, there's several workers climbing on the outstretched arm of the statue that holds the torch. It reminds me every day I pass it of the story and soul of our nation and the power of the American people. There's a story of a veteran. This is a veteran, a son of an immigrant, whose job was to climb that torch and polish the amber panes so rays of light could reach out as far as possible. He was known as the keeper of the flame. He once said of the Statue of Liberty, quote, speaks a silent universal language, one of hope that anyone who seeks and speaks freedom can understand. Yes, we sway back and forth to withstand the fury of the storm, to stand the test of time. A constant struggle, a short distance between peril and possibility. But what I believe is the America of our dreams is always closer than we think. And it's up to us to make our dreams come true. Let me close by stating my gratitude to so many people, to the members of my administration, as well as public service and first responders across the country and around the world. Thank you for stepping up to serve. To our service members and your families, It's been the highest honor of my life to lead you as Commander-in-Chief. And of course to Kamala and our incredible partner, the historic Vice President. She and Doug have become like family. And to me, family's everything. My deepest appreciation to our amazing First Lady who's with me in the Oval today. For our entire family. You're the love of my life and the lives of my love. My eternal thanks to you, the American people. After 50 years of public service, I give you my word. I still believe in the idea for which this nation stands. A nation where the strengths of our institutions and the character of our people matter and must endure. Now it's your turn to stand guard. May you all be the keeper of the flame. May you keep the faith. I love America. You love it too. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you for this great honor.
President Biden at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, his farewell address to the nation, saying it's your turn to stand guard. He talked about democracy, that it must be defended, the soul of our nation he spoke of. He said, in the past 4 years, I'm proud to have been president for all of the people. He did warn about issues on the horizon, artificial intelligence. He talked at length about the concentration of technology, power, and wealth, saying technology will help the U.S. lead globally, but that we must be careful about the concentration of power and wealth that comes with it. He talked about the dangers of disinformation, falsehoods, the lack of fact-checking, and the lies that have permeated the discussion in this country. But in the end, he said, I believe in defending possibilities and in defending democracy. And our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, he made it very clear. He said, history essentially is now in your hands, to the American people.
Exactly, David. This was a chance for President Biden to tout his accomplishments, try to define his own legacy, but also argue the importance of American democracy and the need to protect it, saying the ideals of America are constantly being tested. He issued a harsh warning to the oligarchs, he said, in this country who are taking shape, that are threatening our democracy. And of course, while he had hoped to continue the job and finish it himself, he is now challenging Americans and the nation to carry his work forward, David.
He thanked the First Lady, Jill Biden, who was right there in the Oval with him. Mary, thank you. He also thanked Vice President Kamala Harris, who he said has become like family to him. I want to bring in Ian Pannell. We have just a couple of seconds left here, our chief foreign correspondent, because Ian, he began with what he has worked on for many, many months, and that is the framework for a ceasefire and a way to get these hostages out. He announced that today in these final days of his presidency. President-elect Donald Trump taking credit as well, and was given credit by those in Qatar and in Egypt who helped negotiate this. They gave credit to both the Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tumultuous period, the last 4 years in foreign policy, from Afghanistan to Ukraine, relations with China, and of course, the crisis here in the Middle East. Certainly his crowning achievement, I think, on his tenure in terms of foreign policy. The guns are expected to fall silent on the 19th of the month, this Sunday, and some of those hostages will start to be released back to their loved ones, and hopefully an enduring peace process will settle in. That is a legacy worth having. David.
Ian Pannell, our chief foreign correspondent. Ian, my thanks to you as always. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. We're going to return you to regular programming. I'll see you tomorrow night for World News Tonight. Good night.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
And there you have it, Scranton Joe in his final farewell, saying goodbye after more than 50 years in public service, saying that he is thinking about who we are and what we should be, reminding us of his successes and his concerns. He said it will take time to feel the full impact of what we have done together, but he went on to say that the seeds have been planted, trying to remind Americans of what his administration has accomplished. He mentioned the new roads and bridges, more jobs, more health care. He said that they had strengthened NATO. But he also talked about the abuse of power, misinformation and disinformation. He talked about distrust, the potential of oligarchs to take control. He said that president's power should not be absolute, and the concentration of power and wealth can cause distrust. It's exhausting and disillusionary. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, joins us now from the White House. Mary, give us some of your key takeaways from his final farewell tonight.
Well, I think this speech had many goals, and the president was first and foremost, I think, trying to tout his accomplishments. As you noted, he stressed that many of them are just starting to take shape. People are just starting to feel them. He's planted those seeds. He was trying to define his legacy on his own terms, but he also was really trying to, I think, to argue the importance of American democracy and stressing that it needs to be protected. You heard the president say the ideals of America are constantly being tested, and he did hearken back to that campaign slogan from 2020 when he argued that he believed in the soul of America and that it was at stake. And it is clear that he still thinks it is at stake tonight. He did issue a surprisingly harsh warning to what he argued was the oligarchy that is taking shape in America and that he said threatens our democracy. And of course, you have to take a step back and recognize that this is the president capping a more than 50-year-long career in politics, sitting there in the Oval Office, delivering his final message to the American people. He tried to end on a note of optimism. Of course, he had hoped he would be able to finish the job. That was his campaign slogan for what he had hoped would be his reelection. And now he's arguing that it is up to the American people to carry forward the work that he began, ending there saying, "I love America. I know you do too." Linsey.
Yeah, certainly not leaving on his own terms. And Mary, I'm curious if you were surprised at all. This is someone who really desired to be president from the very beginning. Even I'm reminded of, as we were doing the final farewell to Jimmy Carter, that he said that he was one of the first senators to endorse him and kind of joked that at the time he was too young to run for president. That's why he wasn't doing it at that time. At the time, he was less than 35 years old. And so his ambition has always been to achieve this success. And it kind of struck me that he focused more on what he's concerned about rather than his accomplishments.
Yeah, it was an interesting balance there, for sure. I think you are absolutely right. He is leaving reluctantly. Even recently, he has said that he thought, he could still have beaten Donald Trump. He could have won re-election. It does strike me that the last time we saw President Biden sit behind the Resolute desk and speak to the nation like this was back in July when he explained to the nation his decision not to continue his bid for re-election. This is not how Joe Biden saw this story playing out. And I think a lot of his message tonight was to his supporters or to those who may be a bit unsteady and nervous about what is to come. The president trying to assure them, trying to be optimistic while also being very blunt about what he feels are essentially the threats facing this nation.
And really also just in our final seconds, Mary, it seemed like he tried to dispel any concept that he might have a frosty relationship with Kamala Harris as vice president.
He certainly did go out of his way to praise her, of course, also thanking his wife who was there in the room and others, and also, of course, noting the importance of the transition of power that we are about to see in just a few days here next Monday. It is bittersweet, no doubt, for the president to have to give this address. He was hoping it would be him who would be inaugurated, hoping it would be Kamala Harris, but stressing for the sake of our democracy, he is going to continue to participate in this peaceful transition of power. Linsey.
Reminding us all that the future is in our hands. Mary Bruce from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary. That is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.
The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
We're in artillery position about 2 miles away from Gaza.
And ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Traveling with the president to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Here in London today.
Off the coast of Gaza.
Downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in. From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii. Some areas are still smoldering.
Wherever the story.
From the front lines, the ruins of Rafah.
From the FBI.
Reporting from Capitol Hill. In western Portugal.
Outside of Mexico City.
In Iceland. Let's go.
Here in France.
The eclipse across America.
Just stunning.
Unbelievable.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere because the news never stops.
For the record, your name is Xavier Collins.
Yes.
You have 2 children.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw Cal Bradford alive?
Agent Collins, have a seat.
I walked the president to his room at 2204.
When did you discover the body?
At 801, that's when I found him lying next to his bed.
Did you kill him?
No.
Is a part of you happy that Cal is dead?
You know something serious about to happen. I have an idea.
You guys have eyes on your targets.
Shouldn't we strategize?
Come on, we're gonna improvise. Freestyle.
No.
Donald Trump, historic, taking the oath of office for the second time. Inauguration Day, America turns to ABC News, starting with a special Good Morning America. Then live all across the day, David Muir, right there as history is made. Monday on ABC.
Reporting from New York, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. There was a major breakthrough in the Middle East today, 467 days after Hamas's horrific terror attack on Israel and the bloody conflict in Gaza that has cost tens of thousands of Palestinian lives. The two sides have agreed on a framework for at least peace in the short term. But first, we turn to the White House, where President Biden just moments ago gave his farewell address.
This will be my final address to you from the American people, from the Oval Office, from this desk as president. And I've been thinking a lot about who we are and maybe more importantly, who we should be.
The president, with just days to go in his administration, with a stark warning to the country, offering this.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
Our chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House lawn. Mary, what were the president's goals tonight in delivering this speech? Do you think that he achieved them?
Well, certainly he wanted to have a chance to define his legacy for the American people, for himself in a lot of ways. He did tout his accomplishments. He certainly noted that some of them may just be starting to be felt, but said that, it was important that the seeds have been planted. But this was also a chance for him to speak more broadly about the state of American democracy, the importance of American democracy, and the need to protect it. We heard the president say that the ideals of America are constantly being tested, and he did harken back to the themes of his 2020 race, where he argued that the soul of the nation was at stake. Clearly, he thinks that is still the case. And he did issue some really harsh warnings, surprisingly harsh, I thought, about what may be taking place in the country, especially noting abuses of power, warning that an oligarchy is taking shape in America that threatens our democracy. This was really a chance for the president, someone who is leaving the office reluctantly, someone who was obviously hoping that he would win re-election, still actually thinks that might have been possible, a chance for him to argue that what comes next is really in the hands of Americans, that it is up to the nation to shape its own history going forward. Linsey.
Yeah, interesting that in recent days he has said as much, that he believes that had he stayed in the race that he would have won. And Mary, the president, though, did not shy away tonight from warning of unchecked social media and unchecked artificial intelligence, divorcing the country from the truth. Let's listen to a portion of that.
The powerful forces want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the climate crisis, to serve their own interest for power and profit. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
And that's really the portion that I found to be extraordinary. How unusual was it to have a president state things that past generations perhaps would have taken for granted?
It is really remarkable to think about, especially given that he is now capping off this more than 50-year career in politics, the warnings that he is making really about the importance of protecting democratic institutions. We heard him, in addition to warning about the dangers of social media, touting the importance and stressing the importance of a free press. The president, we know, has, I think, struggled with the fact that he had to deal with so much misinformation, that he wasn't, during his time in office, able to better take on that challenge. And it is a challenge for the entire country and certainly anyone in the political sphere. So the president coming out and trying to put that at the top of Americans' minds as he leaves office and they think about the incoming administration as well.
Mary Bruce from the White House for us. Mary, thanks so much. Joining us now, ABC News contributor and former DNC chair Donna Brazile and senior editor of The Dispatch and ABC News political contributor Sarah Isgur. Thank you both for joining us. Donna, let's start with you. You've, of course, known President Joe Biden for a long time. This was the last major speech of his career. Your thoughts?
Well, as you well know, Linsey, had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lived, he would have turned 96 today. Dr. King was a drum major for justice, and I think tonight he would have thought about Joe Biden's legacy. May the work that I've done speak for me. Joe Biden has had a long career in Washington, D.C., but it's been a period of sacrifice for him and his family, but also he believes in service. When I saw the president a couple of weeks ago, he talked about those long years of wanting to get involved in politics, to make a difference, to be a civil rights lawyer, to be a champion for equal rights. And what I heard tonight was, yes, a president who understands the long view of history, that he left behind an administration that got us back on our feet, reopened our schools, got us back to work, and a president who's proud of the work that he has done. So, well done, Mr. President. I'm looking forward on Sunday to hearing him at Mother Emanuel Church down in Charleston, South Carolina. Joe Biden still have a lot of fight in him. I know many people doubt it, but Joe Biden deeply cares about the American people. He said, and he promised to be a president for all Americans. And I do believe he kept this promise.
Sarah, any standout moments for you?
A moment that really stood out was when he talked about the need for Americans to respect the institutions of the courts he mentioned, the press he mentioned. And yet in the last several months, of course, Joe Biden himself has attacked the courts by pardoning his son, saying that he couldn't have received a fair trial. He was the president who's met the least with reporters in press conferences, et cetera. I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition and maybe summary of the entire Biden presidency and some of the tensions that he leaves behind. Even how he began the speech and talking about this hostage release negotiated between Hamas and Israel. Right, this comes at the very end of Joe Biden's presidency, something that he's worked on since October 7th. Even with his best intentions, perhaps unable to get that over the finish line until Donald Trump came in. Again, this tension, this juxtaposition of a Biden presidency wanting more than they were able to do.
And Donna, of course, you know President Biden personally. I'm curious if you all have spent any time together in recent days that you might be able to share with us, if he's expressed that this moment is bittersweet. Of course, he's been in political office, a public servant for 50 years at this point, but it didn't quite seem yet that he was ending this on his own terms, that he really was ready to say goodbye.
Well, Joe Biden, he wants to fight. He wants to stand up for the middle class. He's not done yet. He wants to continue to build upon the great legacy that he has created. 16 million jobs, violent crime at the lowest in 50 years, 20 million new small businesses. Joe Biden want to continue to help the American people, to make sure that people can make ends meet. This is the Joe Biden that I've known for over 38 years. And when I saw him recently in Linsey, he met with the colored girls. We had lunch over tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Joe he's old school. At the same time, he has the long view of history, and he understands that the seeds that he has planted today in rebuilding our alliances and getting the American, auto industry back on its feet. Joe Biden is fighting for the long view. He loves his country. He loves our troops. He loves his family. but more importantly, he believes in each and every one of us.
He talked tonight about those seeds that have been planted. Of course, this speech was a chance for him essentially to write his own legacy, have the last word on his career. Do you think that he was effective in achieving that?
I hope so. And I do know that over the course of the next 72 hours or 96 hours, Joe Biden is going to continue to plant more seeds because he is a man of the future. He really looks down the road, not just at himself, but also where the American people will be 50 years from now.
All right, Sarah Isker, Donna Brazil, we thank you both so much for your time. Joining us now is Washington Post Associate Editor Mary Jordan. Mary, thank you for joining us. Just to start, your first impression of the speech tonight.
By far, one of the most memorable speeches he's given, because Joe Biden has really struggled with the narrative, and Donald Trump has basically run the whole narrative. Joe Biden has made plenty of mistakes, but even when he did monumental and good things like the infrastructure bill that, fixed a huge and embarrassing problem. We had airports and roads and bridges that were crumbling, an embarrassment around the world. And he got a bipartisan bill. But people don't even know that. 10 years from now, when some beautiful new airport is finally going to go up, people aren't going to say, oh, yeah, Joe Biden did that. But tonight, I thought he was blunt, unusually clear, and he was, he said that he's really worried about a handful of extremely wealthy people and the power they control. He talked about that it's very much like a century ago with the robber barons. And then he said optimistically, we busted that before, that abuse of power, that concentration of power among the rich, and the middle class was born. I think that this speech, which really, he was so articulate about a lot of the problems, about lies, misinformation, erosion of the freedom of the press. I think that people are going to be studying and looking at that speech for a long time because finally, I think he said something clear, and it was, even though he never once mentioned Donald Trump's name, he said, he graciously said, I wish the next administration well. Everybody knew he was talking about Donald Trump at many points when he talked about abuse of power and lies and worried about the institutions, but it was very interesting that never once did he say Donald Trump's name.
It is interesting. You're right to point that out. This speech for President Biden, of course, was not only a farewell to his presidency, but also half a century in government. How do you think that shaped the speech ultimately that he gave tonight?
It was everything. I mean, you could really feel it, and I think that's what gave some power into it, because he's saying goodbye after 50 years. He's 82 years old. He has given his life, as he said, my heart and soul to this, and I think some of that came through. Again, he is not known as a great communicator, but I thought tonight people are going to be talking about that speech. You don't talk about oligarchs running America all the time from the Oval Office.
Yes, he described himself and has many times, that little boy with the stutter from Scranton, Pennsylvania, making it to the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. Washington Post Associate Editor Mary Jordan, we thank you for your insight and time, as always. Now I want to bring in ABC's Olivia Rubin and Perry Russum. Olivia, President Biden mentioned the oligarchy that he said is taking shape and called out social media, disinformation, misinformation. Do you think that those are criticisms of the incoming administration? Is that really kind of obvious?
I was going to point out the same thing that Mary Jordan said, which is that he never once said Donald Trump's name. Yet at the same time, like you said, some of this seemed so obvious that he was, talking about the incoming administration. Think about when he delivered that line saying social media has given up on fact checking. That seemed like a clear nod to Facebook, which just, of course, rolled back a lot of its fact checking policies. And I think, talking about the tech entrepreneurs overall coalescing about Donald Trump around power, that seems to be Donald Trump, right? It's hard to ignore the fact that Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, these are the tech entrepreneurs, the billionaires of America, and they have become quite close with Donald Trump, going to Mar-a-Lago, donating to his inauguration. It seemed to be, a clear, pointed statement without ever having to say it directly.
And Perry, President Biden, of course, touted his legislative wins. Perhaps he felt that many Americans needed him to kind of underscore them. What stood out to you?
Yeah, it was this line that he said, Lindsay. He said, "It will take time to see the full impact of what we created together." My mind immediately went to Jimmy Carter. We've been covering him extensively the last couple of days as he was laid to rest in Plains, Georgia. He, too, had a checkered presidency, a one-term president, and it was not until years and years, sometimes decades later, that his wins in the Oval Office were fully appreciated and seen by the American public. We will have to see if the same happens for President Biden. But both men did not leave on their own terms or favorable terms. There was some new polling today from CNN about the favorability of Biden's time in office. It was conducted over the weekend with 61% saying that his presidency was a failure and 38% saying it was a success. So we'll have to see if down the road those numbers do change, as we have seen for some previous presidents.
That's right. History can often record differently. Perry, Olivia, our thanks to you both. Now to that major breakthrough in the Middle East. 467 days after Hamas's horrific terror attack on Israel and the bloody conflict in Gaza that cost tens of thousands of Palestinian lives, the two sides have agreed on a framework for peace. President Biden announced the deal this afternoon. It's a multi-step process based on framework that he actually introduced last May, negotiated along with Egypt, Qatar, and the incoming Trump administration. But while this deal sets the stage for this war to finally end, the days ahead could still prove critical. Here's ABC's foreign correspondent Tom Soufi-Burridge.
A sense of relief in the streets of Tel Aviv and Gaza tonight, after Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire with the release of dozens of hostages still held inside Gaza in exchange for hundreds of Palestinians freed from Israeli prisons. Starting this Sunday and over the next 42 days, Israeli troops will withdraw their forces to a buffer zone around the Gaza Strip, halting military operations for the release of 33 hostages, starting with all women, children, elderly and the sick and injured. The pause in fighting would allow desperately needed humanitarian aid to flood into Gaza and allow negotiations to begin for a long-term ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who approved the deal, will now seek the green light from his security cabinet before going to his wider government. Barring any legal objections, the IDF would start receiving hostages in what they're calling Operation Wings of Freedom. Among those that could be released in Phase 1, 2 of the 7 Americans captured and believed to still be alive. Sagi Dechelchen, a father of 3, and Keith Siegel, a North Carolina native. Edan Alexander, a dual American citizen, was serving in the IDF and stationed in southern Israel the morning of October 7th. While it's believed Edan won't be released in the first round, his father speaking just hours ago and saying he's never lost hope.
Unfortunately, for the families that are waiting for their loved ones to be buried in Israel, the nightmare is over as well.
Gil Dickman, cousin of hostage Carmel Gat, killed in captivity in Gaza, praising President-elect Trump.
I think Trump was the X factor in bringing this deal to life.
The framework of the deal, spearheaded by the Biden administration, Qatar and Egypt, has been on the table since May. But after Trump's election victory in November, there was renewed momentum to close the agreement.
I knew this deal would have to be implemented by the next team. So I told my team to coordinate closely with the incoming team to make sure we're all speaking with the same voice, because that's what American presidents do.
With just days before he takes office, Trump calling it an epic agreement. This deal, a major promise for the president-elect.
If the deal isn't done before I take office, which is now going to be 2 weeks, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
The deal, the first truce since December 2023, now puts Israel and Hamas one step closer to ending a 15-month war that began early on October 7th when Hamas fighters brutally kidnapped and killed more than 1,200 Israelis. Following the horrific attack, an unrelenting assault launched by Israel. Entire areas reduced to rubble. To this day, more than 46,000 Palestinians have been killed. Back here in Hostage Square, where so many have pushed the government for a deal, heartbreak amid the celebration.
The deal that they're signing is very much the same deal that they had in May. Carmel was there on the list for the very first phase, and they didn't sign it in time.
Now let's bring in our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, also in Tel Aviv tonight. And Ian, we know holding this ceasefire will not be an easy task. How are they going to keep this deal from falling apart?
Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult. And in some senses, we've seen how hard agreeing on phase 1 was. Well, agreeing on phases 2 and 3 is going to be even tougher. I think the first stage is, I think the biggest danger is that there is some breakdown in the ceasefire. Now, the deal is going to be monitored essentially by Qatar, by Egypt and the United States. They're going to act almost as moderators to check that everyone is abiding by their commitments. But while phase 1 is being implemented, then they've got to start the tough negotiations for phase 2, which should see the final release of all the hostages, including the bodies of those who were killed either on October 7th or throughout the course of the bombing campaign. And then phase 3, which is going to be the toughest of all, because that looks at the next day. In other words, what happens to Gaza after Israeli troops withdraw, if indeed they do, and what does that look like? And that's going to be hugely challenging, not least because the Israelis have made it clear that they don't regard Hamas as legitimate, that they should not run the government. However, they were elected. They're not just a military movement, they're a political movement as well. So who fills that void and how is that policed? Lindsay?
Yeah, so many questions about what happens next. After the announcement of the ceasefire, as you know, bombings continued in Gaza. In just 1 hour today, 12 people were killed, at least 20 injured. That's according to Gaza's civil defense. Do you anticipate that that will only continue until the ceasefire goes into effect on Sunday?
I think we should expect that. In fact, possibly even an escalation. If you look at what happened after the agreement was struck between Hezbollah and the Israeli government, that there was an uptick in the bombing in the final few hours. And again, I saw this in Lebanon in 2006 at the end of the war there. The bombing accelerated in the final few hours, trying to achieve certain military goals, but also denying land and access to people. So, yes, we should brace for more. More than 80 killed since this morning in Gaza. So, yes, some sense of relief that this is going ahead, but the reality on the ground is life and conditions are as tough as they've ever been. Lindsay?
Ian Pannell from Tel Aviv. Ian, our thanks to you. Once again tonight, the Los Angeles area is on high alert for new fires. Thousands of firefighters are stationed and at the ready. And with more than 12,000 homes and structures already believed to be destroyed, rents are skyrocketing and authorities are warning against price gouging. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, is on the scene again tonight.
Tonight, with that fire danger looming, families in Southern California are shell-shocked and worried a new inferno could break out.
They've got everything prepared. You can see the monumental amount of resources. A fire truck here, one tucked in there, another one in that driveway, 5, 6, and on down almost every block as fire trucks here in this canyon.
Today, we spoke with L.A. County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney.
There is another Santa Ana wind event forecast for next week.
Yes. Yes. The LA County Fire Department's going to be ready.
Across the fire zone, at least 24 still missing tonight. Meanwhile, thousands of displaced families are struggling to find shelter. Rents skyrocketing.
My son keeps asking me, when are we going to stop moving? And I don't have an answer for it.
After the Eaton fire destroyed her family's Altadena home, Erica Lee telling our Jacqueline Lee she's seen the price gouging firsthand.
How quickly are these listings getting taken off the market?
I've reached out to a couple places, and a lot of them have already been taken. And one of them that I applied for upped the rent $1,000 an hour after I applied.
LA's district attorney demanding it stop.
So not only are you going to be looking at criminal penalties, you will be looking at civil penalties. You will be publicly shamed.
And today, children whose elementary schools burned down in the Palisades fire welcomed to new ones.
We're excited. I'm really thankful for Brentwood opening their doors, and I feel like it's been really helpful.
But it's not school that's on their minds, or even the Play-Doh in 9-year-old Charlotte Owens' hands. Her home has smoke damage.
I had to spend my birthday under evacuation. My worries of just like my house burning down just gone to my head. Nightmares of no house and all my stuff being gone. My childhood memories might be gone.
Hard to process at any age. Our thanks to Matt Gutman. Still to come, the Los Angeles area wildfires are taking more than just homes and prized possessions. How it's also taking the ability for some to find a sure path forward.
This family
city is suffocating. We are all here to help them.
We're going to make this happen.
We have 96 hours to build a house.
Come on, guys, it's moving day. Let's go. It can't be real.
This was more than just extreme home makeover. This was extreme life makeover.
Extreme Makeover Home Edition, Thursday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
The news never stops. We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We heard what appeared to be gunfire. The former president rushed off the stage.
Hurricane Helene ravaging the coastline of Florida.
It's moving really fast, screaming across the state.
And that's why ABC News Live never stops.
Taking you to the center of the story.
As news breaks live.
We hear the small arms fire around us.
We're right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
ABC News Live is there for you at the start of your day all morning live.
ABC News Live, right there, as events unfold across the day. ABC News Live, breaking down the day's top stories.
Lyle and Eric Menendez, there is new evidence in this case.
ABC News Live Prime going there, wherever the story is. Are you going to build it back up?
And ABC News Live, lighting up the weekends.
With breaking news and all the latest pop headlines.
Happy Oscars Sunday.
A lot to watch for tonight. ABC News Live. Because the news never stops.
2025, bring it.
Bring it.
Bring it.
January mornings on GMA.
It is time to start strong in 2025.
Let's do it, people.
How you feel, how you look, being happy, really happy. The secrets and tips you want, you need to living your best. Mornings this January on GMA.
Come on, start strong.
Come on, start strong.
You're going to own 2025.
And we can't wait to help.
Let's do it, people.
Start strong with GMA.
Start strong.
Come on, start strong. Did I finish with this?
Finally, tonight, there are so many layers to the devastation across the Los Angeles area. Not only homes being lost, but steady incomes as well. Our partner station KABC and reporter Mark Cotto Robles has this story about Altadena, about one man who lost his home, and sadly, much more.
I can't see where I'm at. Surrounded by flames, Robert Lund and his wife filmed cell phone video as they made one final attempt to save anything from their home.
It's not worth it. Our house is gone.
It was too late.
My heart was in my throat. I got to a spot where I've never known fear like that before. We were surrounded by a firestorm. So this would have been our front door right where that little light is.
We spoke today outside what used to be his Altadena home.
I've never seen anything like this except in a picture of a war. We were in the process of adding on to our house.
His family now among the thousands facing the daunting aftermath, dealing with insurance, temporary housing,
all that stuff,
and the thought of rebuilding. But Robert has plenty of experience with that as a general contractor, building and renovating homes across the San Gabriel Valley.
Wow.
But the extent of his loss will not make his road to recovery easy.
My truck, which was filled with tens of thousands of dollars of tools, my garage, and basically I have to build from ground zero again like I was just starting.
Add to that, homes he was working on also gone.
I had 4 projects burned down that I will no longer be able to work on. So that was active, current income for our family.
While his family finds a long-term place to live, he's leaning on the support he and his family have already received.
The amount of support that people have been willing to give and just love, I mean, it's just been an outpouring from everywhere, from people we haven't heard from in years, just even a text, a call, and just that feels amazing. I would just imagine they would be melted.
Once he's fully back up and running, he expects to be working nonstop, not just for himself, but to help others.
We planned on staying here forever, you know, and now there's even more of a reason because we're going to help people come back. So this is home. Yeah, we love Altadena.
Already planning to rebuild. That is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a good night.
I'm 110% ready to fall in love.
Tall, handsome, smart. He's perfect.
Time just stood still.